So there are finally signs that we're heading out of the cross-gen period. Yay. Yay. Controversial opinion, but I think I'm going to miss it. While it may have limited the full potential of some games, it pretty much guaranteed all new games had at least a 60 FPS mode, and I've become pretty accustomed to that now. Am I the only person that feels this way? I don't think you are, based on the 200 odd comments on the Eurogamer article that I posted the other day. But Alex, what do you make of this?
I really see the benefit of all that, and I honestly agree with it a bit too. I really wish console games did target 60 in like a perfect world, just because of the input response and the visual look of 60 FPS, the animation flow. There's so many things that I think are just better about it, but it is unrealistic because there's no mandate from a console maker's perspective of this all games on our console have to be 60 FPS, and there's just a budget of how much frame time you have, and developers are going to choose at some point in their development that they want to target one or the other, and that's going to be pretty restrictive. Now the thing is, you're definitely not the only person who feels this way. I just think that as the gen goes on, depending upon how the consumer reaction is to games, it could influence developers' decision when making their games. I think there's that pretty famous example of Insomniac, who strived for so long for 60 FPS on like the PS2 era and early PS3. And then they came out and said, well, no one cares. Why don't you all care? We care. Why don't you care, consumer?
But then they started caring again.
They started caring again at some point in time. So maybe that'll happen again too here, where there's a backlash to 30 FPS and games don't sell as well for some reason. I don't know. Does that sound realistic? I don't know. And maybe then we'll see a return of the king of 60 FPS.
Well, I don't really know where to begin with this one, but I do think that if you're going to basically make 60 frames per second mandatory, then you are closing the door on certain game concepts, right? Would the Plague Tale Requiem look as it does if there were a 60 FPS minimum on there?
I bet they could still get it to look pretty close, though. I think
it would look good.
Probably have to cut back a few things, but
Well, the main conceit of the game is the horde of rats, right? Looking at the data, that is a massive CPU drain.
Yeah.
Do we need that many rats? Can they fake those rats in some other way? I don't know.
Well, I don't think they put it that much in there for the lulls.
Yeah, I think they're doing it from what they want to tell a story perspective.
Yeah, I know.
And, like they are limited by some technical aspect on the consoles there, which is why it's 30 FPS. And something that a PC analysis would also reveal, I think, pretty well.
That is interesting, right, Alex? Because you've just posted your Gotham Knights PC review, which essentially says, actually, there's no real reason for a game like this to run at 30 FPS on the consoles. But then, conversely, you look at the Plague Tale, and looking at the PC version, you can kind of understand why it is like it is, and maybe that is the template for, or rather, a potential future for the current generation consoles to get that level of fidelity.
Yeah, it's kind of funny that Gotham Knights kicked all this discussion off because it's the least deserving. I think, Rich, in your article, I think you also said this, and I think John said this last week maybe, where it seems like a game that was cross-gen originally, and they had to cancel last gen because it would never have run on them. And then it was just kind of brought kicking and screaming even onto the new gen because it was maybe a troubled project. That's the feeling I get when I look at it. And I felt that very intensely when I was playing the game and I walked from one street to another and the entire street in front of me popped up and all the cars on the street leveled up and leveled down at the exact same moment. I thought, I don't think that was a design goal. I think that's just baggage. So I think it's funny that is the game kicking off this discussion. Rather, I think a game like Rich just mentioned, Plague Tale, and whatever our first Unreal Engine 5 titles are going to be. I don't know. I think those are going to be the ones that are going to be saying like, oh yes, this is what 30 is going to be like if it's actually 30.
I think we need to specify that we're talking about Unreal Engine 5 titles that use Lumen and Nanite.
Yeah,
right?
Sure.
Because
sure.
Fortnite is a UE5 game.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we need to hammer that one down. And there's a lot of talk about games that are coming out that are UE5, and it may, it can just be a point release for UE4 if you're only using UE4 features, I guess.